All right, it's 8 minutes after 7. Welcome to Talk right here on the AM show. Two guests we'll have, but one is in now. We're going to start the conversations with him, and then later on, our second guest will join. Eduje Tamaklo speaks for the National Democratic Congress, and he's also a lawyer. Good morning to you. I think it's Happy New Year to you.
Same to you.
How does it feel in opposition?
I think it's an experience that I've gone through before. I must say my early days for the NDC was in opposition. That is from the year 2001 to 2008. So it's more like going back to your former house, more or less. So it's not much of a problem, because once you have in mind that this is not going to be a permanent state, so I mean, you just work as what you have to do under the circumstance and be positive about the outlook.
Were you ready for this as a party?
I should think so, no, but it was a possibility. Once your fate is going to be decided by a kingmaker, you can only be hopeful that they'll renew your mandate. But beyond that, remember that you are subject to what they think. And that is what they think under the circumstance. So we will take it that we'll respect the decision that they have taken. We'll go back, do our homework, and come back more stronger.
I have argued in private that being in opposition is not so bad, because it helps you see the people who are really with you, because you had a lot of people on board and you may not know if they all believe in your ideologies, or they just like to enjoy being in power.
Like it is stated, being rich comes with a lot of friends. Success comes with a lot of friends. The moment there is anything like failure, it gives you, like you rightly pointed out, the opportunity, as it were, to know those who will be with you in this struggle. And I remember when we were in opposition from 2001 to 2008, and that was the time I was in the university. And so I saw how people, I remember in 2004, in my constituency in Domikwabenya, we went on a reorganization, and we wanted somebody to be our parliamentary candidate. And all the big men used to live around North Legon, Hachu, Ekomog. So we'll go to you that, well, please, can you become a parliamentary candidate for us? And you hear the person will say, maybe sometimes a former ambassador under Jerry Rawlings' administration, the person will say, my family has advised me not to do active politics again. So you go to another person. So it was even difficult getting somebody to become a parliamentary candidate in the year 2004, particularly in the constituency where I was. So it tells you, and these were persons who were appointees under the previous administration, and they wouldn't want to have anything to do with, but eventually in 2008 when we won, incidentally, I saw some of these people, you know, running very fast with their CVs to the Flagstaff House and the Castle of Sioux, saying that, you know what, we are cadres, we have been with the party, all this. And you're looking at them and say, wow. But you see, that's the thing with power. It brings everybody on board, those who like you, those who don't. So we'll see, like you pointed out, how opposition is going to pan out, the people who will stay the course.
Yeah. Have you had any shocks yet?
No, not as I know of.
Have you lost any friends?
I think it's too early day yet.
Okay.
And to begin to make, but obviously there are friends who today will be making subtle overtures to those in power now. Don't be surprised that at the end of the day, you have people within the party who wants to buy their freedom, quotes, and therefore wouldn't mind even, you know, compromising the whole political party for where they stand. Politics, I always say that everybody should try to do politics one way or the other, because it's the best opportunity to see demons, angels, friends, enemies, and what have you, within the same group. People stabbing you, people encouraging you, all these things. They're all good.
Whilst we're talking about the party, can I just try and see if there's an update on the committee that was set up to look at the laws why the loss and then make recommendations?
No, so far not as I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yes, not as I'm aware of. But it's important that some of these things are more or less decentralized. So every constituency, the regions are equally doing their own introspection, trying to find out what exactly happened. Because at the end of the day, like we always say, all politics is local. The people will come, the committee members will come, listen to opinions and views. But at the end of the day, once you go to the respective polling stations, they are able to tell you that, you know what, the parliamentary candidate never visited us. That is why we also switch our allegiance. Somebody will say he did, but he was not forceful. So all of these things will be coming on board as we try this reorganization. Remember that already we have a template on this reorganization that we did in 2001 under the leadership of Dr. Obeda Samoa. So this is not something so different. I'm sure at the end of the day we should be able to pull through.
Okay. So being in opposition also came with, you know, something else. President Mahama moving out of his official residence, requesting to keep the facility.
Sure.
And the talking points that have come afterwards. Yesterday, there was a letter that he signed saying that he requested, but he was withdrawing that request, if there's anything like that. Do we know why? I know that he gave certain reasons, but what went into that decision?
Okay. I think that, first of all, the constitution that we have taken onto ourselves, that we have used all this period, allows Article 71 of its holder certain what you call entitlements, particularly in the case of the president. His entitlements are supposed to be determined by a committee to be put in place. The recommendations of those committees are supposed to be approved by Parliament. In the case of former President Mahama, what happened in fact is that this committee that was put in place makes certain recommendations. And important to say that the precedents that we've had in this country, and remember that the first time that we had a change of government, I mean from one political party to another, was in the year 2000. So we saw a situation where former President Rawlings had to leave because for a long time he lived at the castle, but the wife and kids were at Ridge. So when he finished his 8 years term, what he did was to ask or request that he be allowed to stay where the wife and kids were. That is the Ridge residence where he is now. And so he has been there till date. Even when on the 14th of February 2011, the place got burnt, the state had to go into having the whole structure again, you know, built or rebuilt for him. So that has always been the arrangement. In the case of former President Kufuor in 2008, 2009, same request was made by him, identifying specific structures that he wanted. He wanted the Chinerihese Committee report implemented to his letter. The government of the day then had certain issues. At the end of the day, the two parties agreed. He identified. Did
they actually agree?
Yes, they did. In fact, at a point, what he even said was that he wanted some, because he wanted to live in his own house, he wanted certain amounts of money paid to him by way of rents that he should have been paying if he was not living in his own residence, about $6,000, $5,000. So there were issues back and forth. And I recall that 2 houses were purchased at Trasaco. His spokesperson then had to go inspect all those facilities, the office where he wanted to be, the former chief of staff, Mr. Martin Newman's residence. That's where he wanted. He went there, inspected his own drawings to do an improvement to that structure. All those matters came up. So it is not.
So he has a residence at Trasaco now?
No, at the end of the day, there was some issues again. So that Trasaco thing was, but then the Deputy Chief of Staff, was the one who handled all those matters at the presidency.
So in the end, we didn't give him any property, did we?
No, no, no. That's why I'm telling you that as we speak, the residence of the former Chief of Staff, Martin Newman, is what the state had finally worked on. And
for former President Kufuor?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this was when exactly?
I may not be accurate in terms of the date, but these are matters that you can easily call Frank Ejekum to verify.
So, but where is this facility?
It should be at reach. It should be at reach. Because these are matters that, like I told you, you can easily call Frank Ejekum. But what is even important in all of this discussion is the fact that at all material time, the former presidents that we've had have one way or the other made requests as to what property to have as by way of their, entitlements or benefits. So when, after the December 7th election, as part of the transition arrangement, and if you recall, on the NPP side, they had Mr. Yao Safmafo, Honorable, as the one leading, and Mr. Julius Debra leading the NDC side. Now, between these two parties, much earlier, incoming President Anado and outgoing President Mahama had met with a prominent chief of this country, and I don't want to mention the name.
So they all sat in the same room to meet?
Yes, and there was this meeting. At the meeting.
When was this?
That's what I said, within the transition process. But this meeting, in fact, took place. There's no doubt at all. At this meeting, it was then the issue came up as to where he ought to be housed as part of his entitlement. Then he suggested that per the Badua report, the latest report, it requires that he should be given a place of his choice. And I emphasize the word place of his choice. So he then suggested that instead of the state having to go acquire land, go put up a structure and everything, he's already in a place. And that place already has all the security and everything done. So this is not a time for the state to go out there, look for a different place, now go house it, put it built for purpose for a former president. So he put this. And the then now President Nana agreed that, in fact, it was going to save the state time and everything, going to do a new place altogether for him. It's also important to make this point that where President Mahama used to stay is not the built-for-purpose official residence of the President of Ghana. It is not. The former vice president that we've had have lived in different places. Atta Mills, Accra, Aliu Mahama, they've all not lived in the same place. Emisata.
So this was not the same residence where the late Aliu Mahama used to live?
No, this is where he did, as vice.
Mm-hmm.
So as vice he lived. But the point I'm making is that Atta Mills didn't live there. Accra didn't live there. So that you say that this is a built-for-purpose vice presidential residence. We've had what is called the Australian House as well, where Emisata lived in, just by Christ the King Church. So this has been the arrangement. President Mahama told that there was a need to have a built-for-purpose vice presidential residence so that all our vice presidents now know that this is where you have to live. And that is the structure being put around Kumoji Clinic, where the Huawei office around that enclave. They are building a built-for-purpose. It's almost complete, where our vice president will be. So when I heard the claim that now Vice President Dr. Muhammadu Bawumia was stranded, I felt, no, that could not be accurate, because already Vice President Emisata had already vacated where he was at the Australian House. So the issue of him being stranded, for which reason we needed to hound possibly former President Mahama out of his where he was, could not be the case, because already Emisata had vacated where he was. What is also important, like I pointed out, is that between these two leaders, there was that good faith agreement that the Chief of Staff, Julius Debra, ought to put in writing. So that.
But this was after Nanado had agreed.
After the 2
that
leaders.
President Mahama then could continue to live in
because it was going to be cheaper for the state, because this place had already been done. It's not now that you're going to get a new place and try to put it built for purpose for a vice president or for the president.
The other argument is, what does the act say?
Which
that you
act?
vacate, as in the transition
Sure.
act, that you vacate where you live.
No. What the act says that you should vacate your official residence. Like I pointed out to you, where President Mahama used to stay, now I would say, it's not the official residence of the president.
Ideally,
of the
he should have been living in the Flagstaff House.
Absolutely. So that is the official residence of the president of Ghana.
But we know that he wasn't living there.
Yes, and it is not because where he lived is the official residence. I think it's important we get it. What the act speaks of is that you vacate, and that relates to all government officials, your official residence. President Mahama, where he was not the built for purpose official residence of the Republic
but it was
of Ghana.
That structure is
If
still,
you remember,
a national asset.
No. I mean, the question was not leaving a national asset. Where former President, what shall I say, Rawlings, is living today in Rich, it's a public asset, if we are to go by your argument. Like I just told you, there's a place being worked on for former President Kufuor.
But in the same vein, can you also then argue that at that time there was no transition acts?
When?
At the time that
yes,
Rawlings left office,
yes,
you couldn't have argued.
But remember that the act relates to, like in your words, a public asset. And like I'm telling you, even where former President Kufuor or Rawlings, where they are putting up together today, I'm saying that they are public assets, if that's how you want to construe the act. But like I said, where former President Mahama has never been the built for purpose official residence of the president of this republic.
Yeah, but
and
my
like
point
said,
is,
at a
isn't
point
it
he used
still
to house a vice
estate
president.
property, so
Absolutely.
that, and that's where officially you're residing.
In fact, the ones that eventually, if the state decide to put up a new place for President Mahama, it's still going to be a state asset. It's important to make this point.
But that would have been, this is what we've given you.
And remember
not
that.
this is what I want, so I'm taking it.
No. In fact, per the recommendation by Parliament, he's supposed to be housed in a place of his choice. That place of his choice could have been a government facility that you just have to do renovation for him.
This is, way out of, but some people have said that could his place of choice have been the Flagstaff House?
Obviously,
since that's also the official residence.
No. I mean, let us also be fair in terms of how we construe matters, so that to say that the Flagstaff House could be a place of his choice, for me, will be an attempt to overly stretch, maybe to a very ridiculous, position where you say a former president can say he wants the Flagstaff House. Obviously, no. But he's entitled to even say any. And in fact, let me also point out that as we speak, a place was, in case of former President Kufuor, a place was to be worked on around the U.S. Embassy, like a safe house for him, was a more permanent and decent place is put up for him. So all of these arrangements have gone on relative to our former presidents that we've had. So it's not a novelty. It's important to make this point that with the good faith understanding between now administration and then the outgone administration, it was based on what you call good faith, mutual understanding. But we are beginning to know that the decision to divert public attention from what has become, the issue relative to the inaugural address by President Nanado had to do with matters that had to do with the international uproar, outcry relative to portions of the speech that were alleged to have been plagiarized. And so there was that deliberate attempt or desperate attempt to, as it were, leak this letter.
You have evidence to that effect?
That
this was a deliberate attempt to
like
change the conversation?
No, I mean, yes, obviously that was it. I mean, I'm a politician, and I know how a politician reacts when he's desperate, because like I told you, this whole thing was one based on good faith and a certain mutual, respect. So the decision to leak it, first of all, remember that Daily Guide first started the story, and then now it got leaked, the document got leaked, and then it became a whole national conversation, obviously to water down whatever it is that have happened relative to the plagiarism. Whether or not it has succeeded, I am not in position to say. But what I know is that today President Mahama has said that, well, his understanding was that based on this conversation that took place in the presence of this prominent chief in Ghana, that the two respects, and other matters that subsequently happened within the transition period, he felt that there was a certain good faith understanding. But now that that good faith understanding has been, tainted by this desperate attempt to divert public attention to what has become of an international, maybe, disgrace or what you call it, then he's ready to let go. And that has always been the posturing of President Mahama. There's no sense of entitlement.
We'll come back and talk more on this. Hassan Tampoli will join the conversation. There's a question of when is President Mahama moving out of that facility? Where would he be living? And then there's an angle of Occupy Ghana as well. Stay with us. It's just 30 minutes after 7. Go on to when is he moving out exactly?
I think that based on the understanding now and pursuant to the letter he himself had written, I should think that a reasonable time is required for him to get his stuff.
Where reasonable time means?
Any time that should be so reasonable. I mean, if today your landlord serves a notice on you to opt out of his, house, maybe a time, maybe 2 weeks or a month or something.
Because what we know for a fact is Dr. Baumia is hanging. Is he hanging? Hassan Tampoli, is he hanging?
The Australian house is still unoccupied, I thought.
So thank you very much. The building that we're talking about, the one that former President Mahama resides in at the moment, has been occupied by his predecessors in office. Mr. Koen Kensenaka occupied that building. Late President Mills, when he was vice president, occupied that same building.
But did you disagree with that?
He decided, and I'm telling you on authority, because I and some others waited on behalf of former Vice President Aliyu Mahama to gain access to that building. So Vice President Aliyu Mahama, the late Vice President, stayed at a residence at Cantonments, not far from that place, around Home Touch, before when Vice President Mills moved out and he occupied that building. So I know I'm speaking on authority, first-hand information.
But that's not
somebody telling me this. You understand? I know for sure. Before when former President Atamos moved out of the premises, late former Vice President Aliyu Mahama entered the premises. So there's a certain history. Predecessors in office occupied that same building in official capacity. So when former President Mahama became the president after the death of former President Mills, he ought to have moved into the castle where former President Mills lived, or he moved to the Flagstaff House, where we have the official residence for the president, and yield vacant possession for the property for the vice president, former Vice President Emi Sata, to occupy. That should have been the ideal thing. So we wouldn't have had this confusion that we have right now. By virtue of Section 10 of the Transition Act as amended, former President Mahama should have vacated the premises at midnight, by midnight on the 6th of January. So that is the position of the law. That law has not been amended. So I do not see how people can even contract out of express provision of a statute.
How about the gentle agreements
You see,
that was reached? Because Edigi confirms that there was a meeting between Nana Addo then as incoming president and as outgoing John Dramani Mahama, and as a certain prominent chief that he doesn't mention the name, even though we know obviously who that person is.
you see, I'm not even sure about the legality of that agreement to start with, because the Transition Act makes provision for an advisory council, which is to be chaired by the Speaker of Parliament, one eminent person appointed by the incoming president, and then one eminent person appointed by the outgoing president, and then two others. So that any matters that have to do with the handing over should be referred to the advisory council.
But was there a meeting, you know, a high
So let me just
meeting?
give you the provision as it is envisaged.
But we know that irrespective of what the law says, sometimes there's something else on the side.
Yes, I just want to make this point very clear. So that the law provides a mechanism for resolution of such disputes. It
There
is
was
not,
no
you
dispute
see,
in the
so
first
I think there's a dispute as to whether former President Mahama is entitled to live in, to use that property as his retirement home or not. No, that is a handing over dispute as far as I'm concerned. The matter should have been referred to the advisory council, which is envisaged in the Transition Act, not an ad hoc committee that should be set up and then negotiate. In any event, you cannot even negotiate an agreement outside of the express provisions of a statute.
But there was
So the
never
statute
a
has
disagreement.
provided expressly what you should do. So if you refer the matter out of the provisions of the Acts, and then you now want an enforcement of the gentleman's agreement, I beg, unless you seek to amend the provision of the Acts, whatever
But
it
if
is that
the
would have been.
incoming president agreed to something like that,
I'm not aware of that. What I do know is that the incoming president appointed Honorable Osafo Mafo as a co-chair. So he represented his interests. And then Honorable Julius Deborah represented the outgoing president on the transition committee. Now, Honorable Osafo Mafo said very clearly that a request has been made, but that the request is being considered. There's no letter approving of the request. So as far as I'm concerned, the person who was appointed by the sitting president right now, when he was incoming, said at the time that there is a request, but there's not been any approval.
No,
so that's what I know. Whatever we are doing, you know, is in the realms of conjecture. What we should limit ourselves to is what is in the public domain. Oh, I mean, how can you even prove that there was a meeting to start with?
well,
But
he,
you see,
he
but
says
you see,
there was.
who was at the
but you see,
meeting?
the letter,
Who was at the meeting?
the letter requesting, or as written by Honorable Julius Deborah, requesting for the facility, makes reference to a previous agreement. It's important we make this point. So it is not as though Honorable Julius Deborah, out of nothing, wrote a letter requesting for sale. It is pursuant to an earlier agreement, and reference is made in that letter requesting the facility that based on this previous understanding between the two parties, this letter is now being written officially or formally making that request. It's important that at this point we all agree that what has been, made was a request, and that request is subject to be accepted or refused. And it's also clear that what former President Mahama was entitled to is an accommodation, a place of his choice. There's no doubt at all about this. So he's made a request based on this mutual understanding. Yes, you may not be privy to it, but it does not take away the fact that there were some gentleman agreement among these parties. Remember,
But if there was an agreement, why did it take such a long time? There still hasn't been a decision, to the extent that the person who chairs the transition team on the other side comes to say that, yes, there's been a request, but we haven't decided.
yes, so that's why, as we speak, there has not been a decision. Former President Mahama has also not taken the place as of rights. That's why it is a request.
I believe,
But
I believe he has
point
taken the
is-
place as of right.
No.
You know,
If
and the reason I say so.
if the man has taken the place as of rights, would he have put in a request? I mean,
Let's just take a quick reaction and I'll read
The-
Occupy Ghana.
and the reason I say that is that he should have vacated the premises by midnight, the 6th of January. His continuous stay in the place means that he's there unlawfully.
So you're saying that he should have vacated whilst the request was being considered?
He should be paying rent by now. He should have moved out of the premises long before.
At what time is the state entitled to house him? Starting from when?
Starting from when he leaves office. Okay. And then it says that an alternative arrangement can be made for him to move out of the official residence. But he has not signified an intention to leave the place.
No. If you have made that alternative arrangement, if you have made
the place has not even been shown.
So you're saying he should be paying rent right now?
He should be paying rent.
What is even important, if you claim that he should be paying rent,
you see,
and when they say, when the same republic has a responsibility to provide an alternative, has that alternative been provided? So you, who had the responsibility to provide the alternative, which is the incoming administration, you have not.
But you see,
have you?
You see, he's entitled to rent 40% of his basic salary. When that money is going to be paid to him, I think the necessary deductions should be made. You understand? Because he continues to, you see, we must respect structures. You understand?
It's about now.
Let's make structures work. So that any time that it is your turn to leave, be it Vice President Dr. Baumia or any future vice president, you must leave the premises in accordance with the provisions of the law. I think that example must be set for everybody to follow, so that we don't have a repetition of this. There shouldn't be any gray area in this.
But Energy, has he got a place? Has he got a place?
He can also move into Australia House, for instance. It's a state guest house. You understand? It's not the official residence of the vice president. He, President Mahama, should have moved into Australia House.
But how does he do that? Under what authority?
But you see, he should have requested that. You see, the law provides under Section 10(1) of the Transition Act as amended that you move out of the place before the swearing-in dates. And then if you don't have any place, an alternative arrangement can be made for you to live somewhere until you have been properly housed. Now, even when he was supposed to leave, the president was putting in request.
I am saying that. You say it is because you are not privy. Obviously, President Mahama had indicated that, well, if the state is willing and able at any time to do this, to go get a place, now put it into tenantable place for him, there's no problem. But because this place has already been put in a more tenantable position, Mr. President, if you agree to it.
But was that in the formal communication?
Oh, I mean, there are certain conversations that if you want to formalize...
I mean, you and I don't have the benefit of the letters.
That's why I'm saying that at least, and as we speak,
there are 2 letters.
President Mahama had put out there a certain conversation took place. There had not been any rebuttal that this conversation never took place from President Nana Addo. No. So I am surprised that we are trying to put kind of spin or more or less.
So
that
this
no.
Let me ask a question that I've heard other people ask. Hasn't former President Mahama got any place at all to live?
I should think that before he came
into office,
even when he was vice, for a long time, he was living at Jolo, even as vice president of the republic. So I don't think they should be what you call an issue that we should even stretch. The man
so quickly,
today, as we speak, he'd put in, he said, look, let all this, whatever storm, end.
Let me just quickly read
should just go
Occupy Ghana's stance. We'll take a quick reaction, then we'll wrap up with the ministers. So pressure group Occupy Ghana has asked President Akufo-Addo to examine and review relevant provisions of Article 71 emoluments and benefits. The group's demand follows former President John Dramani Mahama's withdrawal of his request to keep his official residence as his retirement home. A member of the group, Asan Kuma, argues that though the former president has withdrawn the request, the article in question needs to be reviewed to promote fairness. Here's a quote: Article 71 was meant for the good of the people of Ghana. It was not meant to give away state properties to various public officers. In our statement, we're calling on the new president to begin this discussion and proposals that we can apply Article 71 well. So the question I'm asking to you, because you're both lawyers, is, are we applying Article 71 well? Are we applying Article 71 well?
I have a view on Article 71 that coincides with the view that have been expressed by Occupy Ghana. I think that the purpose of Article 71 is to provide some kind of comfort for those who serve us in those capacities, and as referenced in Article 71, to provide them with some level of comfort in the hope that while they are in office, they will not plunder our resources. You understand? So that you are assured that when you serve your time and then you leave office, there is something that the state will do for you. But I have a feeling that even though it's supposed to be some kind of modest comfort, it appears that the comfort that is being provided for right now is beyond the anticipation of the.
Imagine if we changed president every 4 years. How many homes would we be giving out?
I do not even have a problem with the presidential bits. I think that it is okay if we provide a retirement home for every president. It should not be too much of a stretch on our national resources. At a location of their choice, not where you live, that you take it so that another one is built for another vice president or president. He also stays there, and then at the end of his tenure, he says that I'm taking it. I think that you should decide. I think the idea is for you to identify a place, possibly even in your hometown, and a residence befitting of your status can be put up.
But
so
are presidents like different from all of us? Because already they have a lot of comforts. They don't pay taxes. We do. I mean, once you get into office, we take care of you as a nation. So why should we? Because it's not easy for us as ordinary people to own houses.
This is a president who will be in office and he will superintend over huge resources. Now, the temptation for such a person who believes that in retirement, I'm going to die in penury, is for him or her.
How do you? Because you're paid really well.
For instance, so you are like, okay, you've come to a certain level of comfort. Some standard of living has been made available to you. You want to continue to maintain that kind of comfort, so that it's possible. It's even what more or less something that can push somebody to dip his hands and plunder the national resources in order to make himself comfortable.
I think that,
so that if you have an arrangement like that, I think it's fine.
I think so the intention of the framers of the Constitution, I don't think is just because they do not want you to plunder.
No, I'm just, it's just my own opinion.
But I think more importantly, like a former president. And that is why, even for his security and others. Because you see, once you become president, the things you get exposed to by way of state secrets and all of those things, you need to be kind of protected. It's like the U.S.
You become a state property.
It's a very difficult thing. I mean, it's like today, Obama being arrested or kidnapped by
some terrorists.
The kind of information that he has, and if he exposes this kind of information to anybody, you end up compromising the whole state. And that is what this thinking has always been. It is not because, they are already being comforted and they want further comfort. The moment you reduce the discussion to that, it bless even a further understanding of that.
So do we have to review this article?
I don't have any problem if there's a suggestion that there should be a further review. Because you see, if you are going to review this constitutional provision, and what a lot of people do not know, is that it's going to even affect judges of the superior courts, former IGPs, chief of defense staffs, members of parliament, several other people. Yeah. So the moment you limit, and maybe now let me borrow Senior Hassan's words, maybe for a high court judge who knows that he'll be leaving office, or a Supreme Court judge is going to leave office and nothing. The thinking always is that you're a public servant. You need a certain, it's sacrificial. This job is really sacrificial. I'm sure that if to be president of Ghana, all the reward there is that I'll be given a house then honestly, I would rather want to do business. Come to think of it, I'll do business and build more houses for myself. I don't need to be president. This whole job is sacrificial, my lady. It's sacrificial to the moon. I mean, can you imagine? Anytime there is doom, so the number of people who are on you, you barely will sleep. And at the end of the day, if we
I believe you can sleep.
No. Oh no, we are still with you. We are still with you in prayers. So don't worry.
We are still with you.
We are still with you in prayers. We are praying. Because you see, I have always formed the view that when there is no light at home, my little kid will be sweating all over. So it's not a good thing. So why should I? So we are really with you in prayers, and we don't get back to that situation. But this job is purely sacrificial.
But on the matter of the amendment of Article 71, I think there should be some further elaboration.
Maybe.
Inside the Constitution. Right now, it says that a committee should be set up. Yeah. The committee will make recommendations for Parliament and the President to approve for Parliament and Parliament to approve for President. I think that there should be some kind of elaborate provision to handle this one and cement it, concretize it in the Constitution for the avoidance of doubt.
Can we have a certain authority that's in charge of this instead of Parliament approve for executive and executive approve, that kind of thing?
Well, this looks like a terminal issue. So is at the end of your tenure. So I think those matters can be easily captured under the remit of the Administrator General.
Okay.
After all, what does
the Administrator General who?
Exactly. I mean,
but
what does it
the
do,
question
for
is,
instance?
what is the tenure of office of the Administrator General? If he's going to be appointed, for instance, by President Nanado, okay, and this person, like you're saying, is going to make a determination as to how Nanado lives after he's left office, then we come back to square one if it's about structure.
How is that?
Oh,
because it's the president that appoints the Shrash boss, appoints the EC boss,
even Supreme Court judges. Exactly the point I'm making. So that the argument on structure is really not the issue, because Parliament could equally be doing it and still be subject.
But we know that if we have something, somebody like that, the person may be more independent. You know, in Parliament
is even more independent. No, Parliament is even more independent.
Doesn't the majority always win?
Mama V, for instance, if you provide in the Constitution that a member of Parliament who serves 4 years and is leaving Parliament, this is what you are entitled to. Some percentage of your basic salary is provided. This is what you leave as your ex gratia. The President, when he's leaving, the Vice President, or other officer, this is what you are entitled to. This 40% of your basic salary, and all that is clearly stated in there. You don't need Parliament to approve anything, or the President approving it.
The only thing that is constant, the only thing that will be constant is the 40%.
No,
but the basic can always be reviewed. Precisely. With the greatest of respect.
Precisely.
So that if today 40%, and I'm doing 40% of say 100,000, I'm just using for analysis. Today it may be 40% of 20,000. But tomorrow it will be 40% of 40,000. So what really have we got into?
You see, even the increment in salaries should be a subject for a different conversation. You understand? That one should be tied in, as far as I'm concerned,
ordinary
with the single spine.
But if you look at,
there should be a universal single spine arrangement that should capture everybody.
Precisely. Officers,
it should have a structure so that people don't tamper with it. Okay. It's not too much tinkering.
Do you have the feeling that President Akufo-Addo will do this?
I do not have any idea whether this will happen or not. But if it happens, I believe it will be something that will be of a very lasting legacy that he would have left.
But how is this very important that it must be, considered, reviewed?
For me, it is. I do not know whether it's one of the priority things. But
no, but the point
is, President Akufo-Addo, he listens to some of these things.
Since you don't want to give anything away, let's move on to the ministers. Yeah, was there something you quickly wanted to say?
No, but I simply wanted to say that putting up this committee, remember you have to go maybe Parliament or the President. These are, because you see, this a whole national constitution. Article 71 is a provision that you cannot just tinker with.
No, in fact, it's an entrenched provision.
Absolutely. So you need to go to referendum. And in fact,
referendum.
it came up during the Constitution Review Commission and all
Yes,
of those
it is,
things.
yeah.
At the end of the day, if you want to work on it, you still have to go back to Parliament one way or the other. What would be their posturing? What would be the posturing of the good people of Ghana when you require a certain number, even at referendum, to get some of these things through? So maybe let's think at it more broadly and look at the bigger picture.
Okay. Let's quickly touch on the ministerial appointments that have come through. We had the second batch yesterday, and I'm told that between today and tomorrow, we should expect a third final list, if you like. There are new ministerial designations that have come with these appointments. A bit surprising to some people. There's the monitoring and evaluation where Dr. Anthony Akoto say would occupy if it's approved by Parliament. There's also regional reorganization and mobilization where where Mr. Daniel Kweku Boche would be occupying. And then, there's, I think there was another one, transport is only transport. And that will be Mr. Kweku Fori Esiama and Mr. Jogate Railways Development. And some persons have said, listen, you're taking this out of, couldn't railways be part of transportation? Just have one technical person who would take charge of that project whilst the minister would give the overall supervision. Why are you separating these? Are you not creating a lot more, bringing a lot more financial burden to the nation?
Thank you very much. I think that the proper view that people should have on this appointment is to go back to the party's manifesto, for instance. So it's the manifesto that the party put forward to the people of Ghana. They said that we want to do A, B, C, D, Z for you. And on the basis of the manifesto and some other considerations, the people of Ghana voted President Nana Akufo-Addo into office. So I believe that his appointments would necessarily reflect the promises that have been made in the manifesto. So in my view, one of the key things that is in the manifesto of the MPP is railway transports. To be able to connect the country via railway and then open up avenues for transporting, bulk transportation of goods and services, fuel, and all that, so that you don't have too many trucks on the roads, for instance. BOST has installations across the country.
And you need a whole ministry to do that?
And I remember when Professor Miao Nkufi was Minister for Railways under former President Kufuor, and I was then at the National Service Secretariat, he came with a proposal that he needed some number of service personnel to help with the ministry's work. And at the end of the day, the results showed that there was some kind of focused attention on the ministry and some kind of reorganization of the sector. Some coaches were innovated, and there was an attempt to even start some new railway channels. Some agreements have been, Nigeria started it. Former President Goodluck Jonathan started one railway line from Abuja, I believe, to Kaduna. There's another one from Port Harcourt, I believe, to Lagos. And that is because there's
And do we know if they created a ministry to do this?
There's a ministry that deals with the infrastructure. So that particular minister is responsible for some of those things. So I believe, and then one of the things that one must recognize is that when you tie the hands of a president, then he's not able to deliver. Then he blames everybody for it. But when you free the hands of the president to decide the mechanism with which he will use to bring into fruition his promises that he made to the people of Ghana, the outputs should rather be of a concern than the inputs.
Okay.
So we should look at the results at the end of the day.
All right.
The minister responsible for monitoring and evaluation is not a ministry per se.
I'm not sure he's even very clear as to what the work would be.
His remit is to be in the office of the president. Now we used to have.
So he's a presidential staffer.
No, he's not a presidential staffer. He's a minister without portfolio, as you used to say it, but with some responsibility. But this time, he's not a minister without portfolio, but he's a minister in the office of the president with responsibility for monitoring and evaluation. You remember Dr. Tony Edu used to have that portfolio as a presidential staffer, or is it the presidential advisor? That position has been elevated to the level of a minister.
So what would he be going around, you know, to check on the ministers? Can he sanction them? What does he do?
If I heard the president right, when he was announcing that particular minister, he said that he had the authority to move around and do some kind of monitoring and evaluation of any other ministry. You know, so that it's not the case that everybody will sit down and decide to do whatever they intend to do, but somebody with a ministerial, because Dr. Tony Edu said, for instance, he had difficulty when he requested information from MMDAs. You understand? But somebody with the ranking of a minister, I believe, will be given some respect when he requests for some of this information in order to test the actual results of the ministries and departments to the party's promises and manifesto provisions that have been made. So I believe this is just an attempt, probably, and I'm just thinking aloud, that the experiences of Dr. Tony Edu would probably have made some kind of additional inputs into the decision to put some.
Energy, how convincing is this? We should allow him. He wants to run the country the way
I think
he thinks it will work.
This discussion should be more focused on what you call campaign promises and more within the ambit of the campaign for change anchored on lean government and protecting the public purse and possibly results. If the campaign promise of a lean government is to go by, then within that remit, you can't justify this duplication of functions. Because again, if Akoto said needs a certain gravitas or pedigree to be feared in order to deliver, then the chief of staff is there. The chief of staff is ably assisted by 2 deputies. 2, you have a senior minister. What more do you want? When the senior minister is demanding for an information, so you create a desk at the office of the senior minister to collate this opinion or views or monitoring reports. You don't need to create one, especially when you preach lean government. 2, if it's about results, with the greatest of respect, President Mahama, for instance, within transportation, looked at it in a broader sphere of what you call a multimodal transport system. That is what explains this Tema to Akosombo railway line. So today, as we have it, Honorable Jogati would ensure that we'll have the railway line from Tema. I mean, already the contract, everything has been signed, money sourced from India. So his work, oh yes, money source. You can later check. Yes, the Indians. And I'll give you the Indians so you can get. The only thing you do is that Honorable Jogati will manage the construction from Tema to Akosombo. Then the actual thing must be moved on water to Bupe. So another minister will also ensure that we do that from that end. The greatest of respect. All you need is a transport ministry with several desks to focus more on these key sectors or subsectors. So within the remit of lean government, maybe we should look at it. More importantly,
we have to wrap up.
Just wrapping up. On the Minister of Regional Reorganization, if you look at Article 5, on the creation of new regions or merger or alteration, the Constitution provides a commission of inquiry to do that, and not a ministry. It's there in Article 5, clearly stated. So you don't need to have a minister to reorganize. This is not even like gerrymandering. Even if it's gerrymandering, you can still do it. So with the greatest of respect, let's begin to think through. Maybe the usual mantra, when you campaign for job creation and you need to create job, as for many of our people as you can, maybe duplicating functions will be a better platform to create more
But you
of
see,
these.
We have to wrap up. I was just going to say, are these the people that you are supposed to create a job
it is too
for?
early to it is too early to assume that there will be a bloated government. You are just 25
So
appointments.
how many are we expecting today? We got 32. But you're pretty close, so you know the number that we should expect.
I will not encourage him to comment.
No, I will not make any comment on it. But
Yes,
what I
yes,
do
yes,
know
yes.
is that
I will not encourage him.
if we are talking about lean government,
Yeah.
we are talking, and we mean lean government.
Okay,
I
so
mean,
this
the
will
fact
be
that these
lean.
appointments
Yeah,
have
it's
come.
as lean as having all these.
You understand?
Okay,
Because
we have to wrap
about
this up.
5 presidential minister for presidential affairs in
You
your.
had your last.
Okay, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. Eduji Tabaklo, thanks a lot, and Hassan Tampuli.
He's my senior. I'm just trying to cause him.
Is this what you do when you're in court?
We do more than that.
If I would have given you a knock, but the fact that we're on air.